Praise be Jesus and Mary.
Now and forever.
For our prayer life to be complete, it has to include thanksgiving to God. In fact, prayer has 4 purposes, 4 ends: adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, and supplication. There's an easy way of remembering these 4 ends. A.C.T.S is the acronym, like the book of Acts of the Apostles: adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, and supplication. So thanksgiving must be there for our prayer life to be complete. If we don't give thanks to God, something is missing. We can't properly adore Him. We can't be rightly contrite. And above all, we can't make proper and effective supplication to God if we're not thankful for what we've already received. On the subject of supplication, there is a Franciscan author who has some pretty amazing insights, and I'd just like to share those with you today. So there's this friar from the 1500s, Friar Francisco Osuna, O-S-U-N-A. He's somewhat obscure, but his works are very influential. In fact, his spiritual alphabet, that's the name of the treatise that he wrote, the spiritual alphabet. That book was so influential and so good that it formed St. Teresa of Avila. She loved it. She had a personal copy of her own and underlined almost everything in that book. So Fray Francisco de Osuna, of the strict observance of the Franciscans, tells us about the importance of gratitude, and he begins with a not very flattering comparison. He says that those who lack gratitude, or the lack of gratitude, makes us like the swine who enjoy the acorns under the oak trees, never caring or lifting up their eyes to see where they fall from. Where do these acorns come from? They just like them. They just eat them without looking up, as though it were no affair of theirs. Let us remember, brothers, that it is important for us to know what we have received and where we received it from. For as St. Gregory says, as the gifts increase, so does the reckoning. And we must cast up accounts of what we receive carefully. And our best means of repayment is giving thanks. In fact, we can't really give back to God anything. He needs nothing. We don't have anything that we could give to Him. But our gratitude is a real means of repayment. So let us begin in this way to repay the giver of all goods, little by little, the vast sum that we owe Him. Because by one act of thanksgiving, we can do 2 things. First, we shall pay our debt, and then we shall deserve greater gifts. So at the beginning I said we can't effectively supplicate God. We can't make an effective prayer of petition unless we are grateful for what we've already received or previously received. One of the ancient writers, Cassiodorus, says, he who has not lost what he received nor forgotten it deserves things of higher value. If we don't lose what we're given, if we don't forget what we're given, then we deserve things of higher value. Hence, there is no better way of asking for what we want than by giving thanks for what has already been bestowed upon us. And then he uses an analogy. Fray Francisco de Osuna uses an analogy, like the waters of the rivers that constantly flow back into the ocean and replenish themselves in that way. He says, God treats us as the sea treats its rivers when they return to it. He seems to think that the water from the ocean of divine abundance is not lost when it returns. The waters of graces and favors do not cease to flow to us. If out of gratitude we refer them to Him, they will be like the waters of which it is said, all the rivers run into the sea, and they return to flow again. That's Koheleth chapter 1, verse 7. So do you hope that the water of grace God has given you may never dry up? Return it to Him gratefully. And as He needs it not, He will give it back to you multiplied and blessed, and will rejoice to see His gift living in you, mounting like a living water to its first source. But if you're not grateful, if you don't give back to God, if you don't acknowledge, then what happens? If you keep his gifts in you, returning no thanks to them, again, that analogy of the waters, what happens? You will become like a waste river which never enters the ocean, but lingers in pools and marshes where it becomes putrid and corrupt and breeds no fishes, but foul and poisonous reptiles instead. Man, what an amazing image. St. John Chrysostom, to sum it all up, says that there's a principle that the giver, when we give, ought to soon forget the gift that he has given. So that's kind of like, don't let your left hand know what your right is doing. So when you are the one giving the gift, forget about it soon. Don't boast about it. Don't think that you're something special because you gave a gift. But at the same time, he who accepts it ought always to keep it in mind and always to be thankful and always exercise that obligation of gratitude. If you give, forget as quickly as you can. If you receive, never forget and constantly give thanks to God. Because if we don't do that, then we can't have a proper life of prayer, a proper relationship to God. We can't adore him, we can't be rightly contrite, and we certainly can't make effective petition for more graces. Let's make sure that Thanksgiving is always a part of our life of prayer, especially of every Mass that we attend. That's why it's so important to do as much Thanksgiving after Mass and Thanksgiving after Holy Communion as we can, to sign that we really appreciate what happened at the Mass, what we received at the Mass, the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. Let Thanksgiving always be a part of our prayer, especially Mass, especially on this day, Thanksgiving Day itself. Praised be Jesus and Mary.
Now